All right, welcome in. Can't believe it is week 6 already of the college football season, but that is where we are. We've got a very intriguing lineup of games here this weekend, including a lot of top 25 teams in action and conference play. Not exactly the easiest of games for some teams that are hitting the road. We're going to cover 5 of the top games coming up this week. We'll do it, of course, with the Friday crew, as we welcome back in Jesse Schule, not the Jesse Schule in the chat room, but the actual real-life Jesse Schule is here. I can't promise you, Jesse, will not be seen trolling in the chat rooms here as we go live here on this Friday afternoon. Bryan, Leonard in the house, BL ready to roll. He's also getting ready for a new NHL season, which kind of hard to believe. The puck drops here tonight in Game 1. And AT Adam Trigger making his season debut here on the College Football Kickoff Show. Shout out to those of you guys joining us live. Instagram, TikTok, X, YouTube Shorts, Facebook, and probably some other unknown platforms. But here's how it works. We're going to break down 3 games. We're going to roundtable 2 of the bigger games, Michigan, Washington, Tennessee, and Arkansas. If you have a question about any of these games or any game on the board, if you're joining us live, drop them in the chat room. We will get to as many as we can as we move along. And welcome in Jesse Schule, not only in person, but also host and chat. That is absolutely correct, FB coach. You're catching on. Jesse, Big 12, brother, for you. And we've got going to be interesting how you approach this game. Oklahoma State at home, Stillwater taking on West Virginia. I don't quite understand how either of these defenses are going to stop one another. There might be triple-digit final scores here between these two teams, but how are you looking at Oklahoma State and West Virginia?
Yeah, unfortunately, before the season started, Oklahoma State was my pick to win the Big 12. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. And there's been some warning signs along the way. I don't know if you remember this, but in the last press conference, Gundy said, the last press conference before week 1, Gundy said, the time to start to ask for money is past. The players need to stop asking for money. Oof. And it was kind of an odd comment. Like, what did he mean by that? And I was like up late last night thinking about that preseason comment. What does that mean? And does that explain the disappearance of Ollie Gordon and his lackluster showing this season? Another thing that you want to look out for is this: we're heading into the 5th game. There's still time for anybody in college football to opt out, red shirt, and try and get a bigger paycheck next year. And we just saw it with the receiver for UCF last night on the news wire. It came out. One of their top receivers opted out. Anyways, Oklahoma State, I mean, they're not a bet-on team at the moment. They can't stop a nosebleed. A big warning sign when they gave up 648 total yards to Arkansas at home. Managed to win the game, by the way. Ollie Gordon's doesn't look like the same guy he was last year. Alan Bowman, one week he looks like he's NFL material, and the next week he looks like he's maybe arena football material, if that. But I think this is a good spot for Bowman. Both these teams are terrible defensively, 14th and 15th in the Big 12. Both of them do put points on the board. Both of them have blown leads or had big comebacks. So this just does look like a game where the team with the ball last is going to win, but the best bet's got to be on the over. And, of course, that's not lost with the bettors. It's been bet up to 65 at a lot of places. If you get a 64.5, you're getting a decent price. It's a high number, but it's high for a reason. I got to go over the number here.
Yeah, honestly, I just don't know how either team is going to stop one another in that one there. So I'm with you. I love the over in that spot. Oklahoma State, West Virginia getting ready to do battle here coming up tomorrow as we welcome in Bryan, Leonard to the house. And Bryan, what in the hell is this? ACC After Dark? Are you kidding me? Now, make matters worse, not only do you have the U traveling 2,400 miles to go to Berkeley, but for the love of God, you got a College Game Day is going to be at Berkeley for a 10:30 game slated for the late night degenerate special. Yikes. Some people believe Miami caught a break last week against Virginia Tech. Wilcox is not a guy I want getting double digits. He always seems to cover these games. Bryan, what are we looking at here?
I got nothing else to say. You took about everything I was going to mention, and I figured you would because Miami, you know more about Miami than just about anybody out there. But, this is the third true road game for the Hurricanes. It's the first time they've left the state of Florida. They played Florida, A&M, and South Florida. It's also a tough spot for the visitor. As you mentioned, after that second half comeback against Virginia Tech, now they got to face Louisville, first ranked team they played on the road next week. Miami lost to the Cardinals 38-31 last year. And that's the Louisville game that they've got coming up. So you got some revenge there. So it is a bad spot here for Miami. They've been able to run the ball at really a will this year. They're averaging 5.92 yards per carry, but it's the passing game that's been outstanding. A 193.14 passer rating. That's a team passer rating, along with a 19-4 touchdown to interception mark. Now, the pass defense has also been very impressive. They permitted just 15 points per game. That said, this is a not easy travel place here, all the way to the other side of the country, and they got to win by double digits. That's a tough call for Miami, but they do have the talent to do that. The Bears have hosted two non-conference opponents, but both were from California. The Bears are 3-1 on the season, with that only loss coming at Florida State 2 weeks ago. Cal needs to win with defense, and thus far they're allowing just 12.8 points per game. Miami has by far the better offense here, no doubt about it. But Cal, as you mentioned, as a coaching staff that has settled under Justin Wilcox in the underdog role. You got a team with an extra week to prepare at home against a team having to travel across country like this. Even though you got to hold your nose a little bit to play California, because that offense isn't going to put up a lot of points against this Miami defense. I think they hold on there in a lower scoring game, and I think they cover this 10.5 points. Give me California in this one.
So hard not to. Plus, we know we haven't had that Cristobal game yet for Miami, although that Virginia Tech game was close. He is bound to make one of those great decisions in game there, play calling wise, that will end up costing him his team. You know it and I know it, Bryan, but it's kind of hard to believe that College Game Day is heading out to Berkeley. And Trig, is that a place you've been yet? Have you been to Berkeley to catch a basketball game here? As I know, College Hoops, you are feverishly recording all of the college basketball previews from places you have been and teams you've seen that you guys can check out right now on WagerTalk on our YouTube page there. But can you believe College Game Day is getting ready to go out to Berkeley? Have you been out there?
I have not, Joe. I'll probably avoid going out there until I absolutely have to. They've got, first of all, that's a long trip. And, but you know what, though? They got to be better. Like, that's kind of the way I'm trying to hit these teams now is either on the incline. I want to go when it's the program is flourishing. If I can pick, right? I would rather be out there when the program is good. So maybe Cal's probably on their way back up from a basketball standpoint too. So maybe we'll get out there soon. I'll do more West Coast probably this year at some point, but no, I haven't been out to Cal yet.
No, neither is College Game Day, so this should be very interesting here, ACC After Dark. But you are going to take a look at another very interesting spot here in the Big 12 as Texas Tech taking on Arizona here. It feels like this is just another dead over. You don't look at a ton of totals, but good Lord, if we're going to get an over in West Virginia, Oklahoma State, are we not getting an over in Tech and Arizona as well?
Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. It feels very square, but I'd be shocked if this one doesn't play over the total. And actually, Joe, I do think you get a little bit of line value here because Arizona ended up in a low-scoring game last week, which I don't think had anything to do with their defense being great. I think that was more Utah's offensive issues. kind of keeping that score down. And then, of course, Arizona just kind of running the ball, getting a lead and being okay with just, kind of running the ball, maybe more so than they normally would, and kind of seeing out that win. So I think maybe last week's Arizona-Utah score might have watered down this total by a couple of points, and maybe you get a little bit of line value there. I'm not sold on this Arizona defense. I know they gave up 10 points to Utah last week, but this is a team that gave up 500 yards of offense to New Mexico and 39 points. And you look at that final score and you say, well, it was a 61-39 blowout. Some of that probably came in garbage time. But, Joe, 24 of those New Mexico points were in the first half. That was actually a very competitive first half. First game of the season, and New Mexico, of all teams, is moving up and down the field against Arizona. Then they go, the K-State game was kind of a blowout. They give up 31 to Kansas State, couldn't get off the field on third down. Again, not sold on Arizona's defense. And Texas Tech, coming into the season, I thought that this was a pretty average team on both sides of the ball. But you can't really argue with what they've done offensively. 66 points against North Texas, close to 600 yards of total offense. Put up 30 on Arizona State. Last week, up and down the field in that game, both teams, Texas Tech, Cincy, they put up 44 points. Who could forget the 52-51 overtime win over Abilene Christian way back in week 1? So, Texas Tech's pretty much on a week-to-week basis found ways to score points. And the one game they really didn't, the one game they were really a mess, was the only time they've been on the road this year, up at, in Pullman against Washington State, where I felt like they kind of were unprepared. They made a bunch of mistakes, gave up 37 points to Washington State. So, I think you see Arizona throw the ball a little bit more this week. I don't think this is the type of game where they're going to be able to just kind of lean on the run and milk the clock. But I do like Arizona's quarterback. Fifita is solid. I think there's more passing in the game plan here for Arizona. And when you add that all up, I don't see how you're not getting to mid-60s here. So over 64 makes a lot of sense in this one, Joe.
Yeah, and I'm seeing too, and correct me if you guys know differently here, but Tech as a road underdog since 2019 is 3-15 straight up. They have notoriously, Trig, been a horrific team on the road when getting points here, and that's been going on for a while now. But where did Taj Brooks come from? Because the kid is an absolute beast. He hasn't always been a Tech, has he?
I mean, just to go back to your first point, Tech, when I started looking at this game, I thought I could make a case for Texas Tech plus the points. You have Arizona coming off of an upset win. Maybe a little bit. I don't want to call it like a fraudulent win because it certainly wasn't. They dominated that game, but Utah without what we would expect to be their starting quarterback. The offense was really poor. But to your point, I don't really have much interest in playing Texas Tech on the road here. So I actually lean toward Arizona slightly, based on the matchup. But again, not a team that I'm not really high on either of these teams. So I didn't want to lay 6.5 with Arizona. But when the way I look at this matchup, I just don't see how either team is keeping the other off the scoreboard. And you talk about the total being 64. I probably make this more like 67, 68. I think the Arizona score kind of negates the fact that Texas Tech just played an 85-point shootout with Cincy, just a tiny bit. But again, what has Texas Tech done to suggest that doesn't happen again here? So it's kind of where I'm at on this one. Not Big 12 is not a conference I do a ton in with college football, but the opinion I have of both these teams is neither defense is great, and I think we see points.
I can narrow that down even 2-4 against an under McGuire in the Big 12 as a road underdog. So it's never been a profitable spot to take the points with them as a road dog in this one. Arizona and Texas Tech this weekend. All right, we got two big games coming up. A lot of interest, obviously, Michigan and Washington. And we'll talk a little Tennessee and Arkansas SEC action coming up. And, boy, that's kind of been a one-sided affair as Arkansas has done some covering over the last bunch of times that they have faced Tennessee. So we'll talk about those games. And, of course, you guys in the chat joining us live. If you have a game that you have a question about, you want to run it by these guys, drop it in the chat room. Those watching on the replay, Drop it in the comment section. We're going to be keeping an eye on the comments right up until kickoff on Saturday. So if you got a game, you got a question, feel free to drop it in the comment section as we get ready for Michigan and Washington. What a game this is going to be, huh? Didn't we? I feel like we just saw this game. Oh, we did. Only there's absolutely nobody that looks the same on either sideline at this point, Jesse Schule. Washington at home, laying points. Michigan, what do we do in this round two between these two teams that played for a national championship?
Well, I think the first thing we got to do is get that national championship rematch, that story out of our heads, because that's not really that accurate. We got different coaches, different quarterbacks, a completely different team for Washington, and only a few remaining from last year's team on Michigan. It's completely different, but yeah, I think the line tells us something. My man Ross Benjamin likes to say the bookmakers are trying to tell you something. And the fact that Washington is a favorite here, just a slight favorite at home, despite the fact that Michigan's the popular team, the Big Ten, the big brand in the Big Ten. Washington doesn't have any fans outside of the Pacific Northwest. But quietly, this team has been quite competitive. I liked the hire with Jed Fish coming over, picking up Will Rogers, who led the SEC in passing a few years ago. Then with the departure or the death of Mike Leach, his career went down the toilet. A bit of a resurrection for him. Nice to see that for him in Washington. I think Washington's got the horses. And people talk about how tough it is to play at Michigan, and USC found out about that. A lot of people don't know that it's actually pretty tough to play at Washington. I think Oregon Ducks fans, USC Trojans fans would tell you that they know a few things about how tough it is to play at Washington. So the home favorite, -1.5, I think it's a bargain. I think they should probably be a 3.5 point favorite in this game.
Yeah, I'm just having a hard time still trying to get over the loss to Rutgers last week, Bryan Leonard. They're just inventing ways, Washington, to lose games in that spot there as a freshman runs on the field to celebrate a blocked field goal attempt that, well, you got to wait until the play's over before you run on the field, you idiot. So now Washington gets Michigan at home. They can certainly wipe that loss away rather quickly with a win here. Do you have any faith they can get it done?
You know, the Wolverines have played all 5 games at home so far this year. 2 ranked opponents, 3 unranked, and they've outscored the opposition 24-8 to 21-4. They've got really good line play. They're averaging a net. This is a net 3.38 yards per rushing attempt. That's the good news. But they have a net deficit of 13 first downs on the season, despite playing all their games at home. You've got a team in Michigan. The passing game has been lousy. They've thrown more interceptions than touchdowns, 7-5. And you've got them traveling all the way to the West Coast. This is something that I've circled all year long in this conference when you got the teams from the Pac-12 playing at home for the first time against teams from the Big Ten. It gives a big advantage to me in the home teams. Washington's clearly played the easier schedule. They did lose to the 2 best teams that they faced, Washington State and Rutgers, as you mentioned. But the defense has permitted just 12.4 points per game while allowing just 2 passing touchdowns on the year. I don't think Michigan is going to be able to put the ball in the air against this Washington team, so they're going to have to run. And when you have 2 teams that like to run and play good defense, obviously we take a look at the under. But this is an awful low under. I mean, you rarely see teams that play of this caliber with such a low total. But that's the only way I would look here. It's not going to be a play, but I think both teams are going to have a hard time moving the football, especially without quality passing attacks. Reminded me a little bit of maybe the old-time service academy games where you see totals in 40s and low 40s. And low 30s. I think we're going to see another slob knocker or whatever the hell they call it. I think it's going to be, all come down to the line play here. Whoever does a better job of running the football is going to get the victory.
It's called ass, Brian, because that's what you feel like watching a game, that the first one to 3 wins. And that might very well be what we get here. Trig, it has not been profitable to back Michigan on the line in any way, shape, and form. I think 1-4 against the number this year. I believe the running total, Washington hasn't lost a game at Husky Stadium. I think it's 17-0 now. So it's been quite a while since they've actually lost a home game here. I just don't know, how does Michigan come from behind if they have to throw the ball, Trig? That's the whole thing with me with this team. How do you approach this?
Well, that's certainly a concern. I think it would be a concern either way, right? And Bryan kind of talked about the offense or the offensive woes of both teams, the low total, 41 I'm looking at right now, maybe 41 and a half, 41. I guess I'll play devil's advocate a little bit here. I did lean Michigan. Now this got definitely Michigan +3 was around earlier in the week. Now I'm looking at like 1.5 most places. I guess for me, the way I look at these two teams, obviously both have dropped. Like there's been a pretty precipitous fall off from last year for both teams, but I think Washington has fallen further. I know I've kind of had Washington circled as a team to try to find a spot to play against. I thought for sure it would be last week for me. The market scared me off of Rutgers kind of come game day last week when it looked like Washington was taking some respected money all day long, and then of course Rutgers wins that game. So I tend to not like to be reactive. And so I feel like I kind of missed my chance to bet against Washington last week. Obviously, Rutgers wins that game. As far as Michigan playing a road game here, it's their first road game of the season, like Bryan said. But, I guess I don't think that that's a huge reason to fade Michigan. They've had 5 weeks to prepare to go on the road for the first time, right? So it's not like they're coming off of crazy travel where they've had to go, they've gone somewhere, come back, or had to play back-to-back, road games. That hasn't happened yet. First road game of the season. I lean Michigan, but I would have liked it at the number earlier in the week at 3. Now at 1.5, it's not as appealing. But I guess if this got played back toward 3, come game day, I might consider Michigan. I just think that they've fallen off less. I think Washington has fallen off further from what they were to last year, and I think Michigan profiles better as an underdog. I don't want to lay 10 like last week with Minnesota. But I don't mind Michigan in that 3 to 4 point underdog role like we saw them against USC. So very slight lean to Michigan for me here.
Slight lean towards Michigan. Pretty much a pick 'em price here at this point. A lot of eyes going to be on that game coming up this weekend for sure. But I'm kind of with Bryan Leonard. This is, oh boy, that's going to be like watching paint dry, that game. Should be fun. And that's saying something since I think we got Navy Air Force this week. So, woo, you can throw that one right into that category. We do have one other big game. We haven't touched base on the SEC yet, so we'll do that here with Tennessee and Arkansas. And by the way, I see we got a couple of questions about UNLV, and it looks like Syracuse tonight is one. I'm also seeing a couple of other games come rolling in. Missouri is another one we've got questions on. So drop those in the chat if you're joining us live here. If there's a game you want a question answered about, or in the comment section on the replay, as we take a look at the Hogs taking on the Vols here coming up this weekend. Interesting because we mentioned earlier, going back a bunch of years, Arkansas has done a hell of a job against Tennessee. They've covered 9 of the last 11. In fact, they won the last 3 that they've played, but they haven't met since 2020. And we know Tennessee now, off that beating of Oklahoma, they had a bye week. And they are just rolling people here is basically what's happening. And we know Arkansas can score. We sure as hell know, Jesse, Tennessee's going to score here. Boy, is it just another over, or do we have faith in a defense in this game? How do you approach it?
It is a tough game to put any money on here, Joe. But, I guess bettors, the last thing they saw with Tennessee was dominating Oklahoma, or that's fresh in everybody's memories, is how dominant Tennessee was in that first test against Oklahoma. Of course, the value probably with the home dog here. if Arkansas plays their best brand of football, they should be able to compete. Like I said, what we saw from them when they were on the road at Oklahoma State, 648 total yards of offense. But, it's tough to count on them being able to do that against a Volunteers defense. I might look at a Tennessee team total. I don't have any faith that Arkansas can stop Tennessee. And I'm sort of 50-50 on whether Arkansas is going to be able to score on Tennessee or maybe even a full game over. Because if the Vols do get up big in the first half, I could see them take the pedal off the gas on the defensive side of the ball in the second half. So I'd expect to see lots of scoring in this game.
If these two teams hold serve, it's going to be a whole lot of scoring in this game, I think, here. Bryan, Leonard, Josh Heupel coming off a bye. We were worried about whether the defense was really any good on that first road test against Oklahoma. But quite honestly, Oklahoma's offense sucks. So I'm really still not sure if this is a real Tennessee defense or not. So how do you approach this game against Arkansas?
Yeah, I'm in very much agreement with both of you. Through 4 games, the Volunteers are outscoring the opposition on average 54-7. They have a net rushing advantage of 4.32 yards per attempt. That's a net rushing advantage. 4.32 yards per attempt. They can run the football on anybody. This is likely the most explosive offense in the nation, and I don't see how Arkansas can contain them here. Tennessee had an extra week to prepare, as you mentioned, after outlasting Oklahoma on the road 25-15, and it took a while for the Tennessee offense to get going in that game. So I think that keeps them prepared for this long couple of weeks of practice getting ready for this game. Tennessee has a 4-game homestand after this, including Alabama. So this is the game Tennessee needs to have before they get to that Alabama and Georgia later on in a few weeks. So they're not going to get a lot of quality points on beating up some of these other teams. But if they can win here at Arkansas by a margin and then come up big against Alabama and Georgia, this team's in really good shape. Arkansas 2-2 versus FBS opposition on the season. They faced Oklahoma State, UAB, Auburn, and Texas A&M. So this will be their toughest opponent. Running game's been pretty good. 5.92 yards per carry. They can run on just about anybody, as they have done for years. That should be enough to score some points here and push this game over the total. Tennessee having that extra week to prepare off of those offensive struggles. I expect this to be a focused offensive team game for Tennessee, and I think Arkansas could score enough to push this past the total. If you like team totals, I think the Tennessee team total over is probably a good bet also. But I think Arkansas can move the ball here. So let's play this one over the total in Tennessee and Arkansas.
Oh, I love that. And let me just send quick here, Trig, a shout out. And Dan, remember Green Wave 810 on Instagram. This guy's going to have carte blanche. Anybody that references his Colombian coffee table in great use right now and gives me a hashtag Friday Yayo, he can have carte blanche on any of these shows anytime. Outstanding Green Wave 810. Really nice stuff with the Colombian coffee table. Trig, Pittman, 7-1 against the number as a dog versus ranked teams. He usually gets his guys up and ready for spots like this here. Lot of love for Tennessee. It's a ton of friggin' points, man. I mean, if Arkansas has any success offensively, how are they running away from them and covering this number?
Yeah, I mean, Arkansas 3-0 as an underdog this season. I guess my only concern is, back-to-back weeks, both road games. They covered the number in both. They beat Auburn. You just have to, wonder did they max out their effort in those two games? And do you get, a little bit of a tired Arkansas team here? I guess that's my only real concern. Because I do think the points is the right side. I think 13.5 is a ton. I am very surprised at how good Tennessee's defense has been. And I kind of have some of the similar questions. So far this year, they've given up 3, 10, 0, and 15. And even the 15 is misleading because Oklahoma punched one in complete garbage time with a minute left in that game. But you even said Oklahoma's offense, really wasn't impressive. NC State's offense has just been abysmal. So those would be kind of the two games you would point to being the tests, I suppose. And I guess in hindsight, I don't know if either was like a super like difficult test, at least not what we thought they might be heading into the season. The other two games were just layup type games for Tennessee. So I still have my concerns about the defense that had a lot of turnover coming into the season. I didn't think this was going to be an elite defense. I thought Tennessee would have a very good, potentially solid defense, but I didn't think this was going to be one of the elite units in the league, which is what it's being treated like in this game with this number, in my opinion. So again, I don't know if Arkansas is the quote unquote test, Joe, but they can move the ball. And you even mentioned at home, they're as an underdog and at home, they tend to hang around in games like this. So I guess my question here is, Tennessee's defense really this good? I'm not fully convinced. Now, I don't love the way Arkansas is kind of coming in third really tough game in a row, back-to-back kind of max effort games on the road, but I would lead to the points here. I just think 13.5 is a lot. And even if Tennessee pulls out into a lead here, I could see the back door being open. So I'll take Arkansas plus 13.5 for argument's sake here.
And I will mention it because it bears repeating for those of you that are new to WagerTalk. If you've watched Bet on it over the last couple of years, I have been preaching to as many people that will hear. There is nobody, and I mean nobody, more profitable as a head coach in the first half against the number than Josh Heupel and Tennessee. They have yet to not cover a first half spread yet this year, and they do it. It goes back to his UCF days in Tennessee. He's the single most profitable first half head coach in all of college football. They are bullies. They like to get out to big leads, and they cover big numbers. So don't be shocked if Tennessee covers the first half in this one against Arkansas as well. All right, we got a bunch of questions coming in on the in the chat room, so we'll go around the horn on some of these here. And Jesse, we talked about Rutgers earlier there on what a gift of a win they were given by Washington, but now they got to take on Nebraska. There are a bunch of questions coming in on this Nebraska team. I don't know. I mean, they started good. Is Rutgers really a 4-0 team? I don't know. I mean, what do we do with these two teams? Because I'm kind of scratching my head with them.
Well, first of all, I always hate to bet on a team that just got a win that they didn't deserve, and that's Rutgers. Yeah. And on top of that, Nebraska has sort of fallen out of favor for bettors based on the result against Illinois. I will say that game was going according to schedule for the first three quarters. I mean, Illinois has turned out to be quite a good team, but it's a bit of a different matchup for Nebraska. Illinois was having success in the passing game with Altmaier. I don't think Kalike-Manis is the same quality of quarterback as Altmaier is. I think Rutgers is going to lean more on the run. Well, that's just not a great matchup at Nebraska. Nebraska is pretty good at defending the run. First glance, it looks like you got an undefeated team getting 7 points. I think that's fool's gold. I haven't bet it. If it dips to 6.5 at any point, I'll probably grab a Nebraska. I think Nebraska takes care of business here.
You like Nebraska to get it done in that one there. All right, let me ask you here, Bryan Leonard, as we have a game with your UNLV Running Rebels here tonight. I thought they were supposed to suck because the quarterback quit. Wasn't that supposed to be? Wasn't that what happened? You sat on this show last week and said, oh, hell no. The line movement once Sluka left was over the top. You told everyone to bet UNLV. All right, so we saw the backup Williams now. Do we like them tonight against Syracuse, or do you think maybe an over? A lot of people in the chat are screaming for points in this one. Do you agree?
I hate to do this. I hate to not give an opinion, but after that 5% last week,
send
on
it
UNLV,
over here, Bryan.
What? Go ahead. Go ahead, Bryan. Go ahead.
Just give Bryan a different game. I'll take the Cuse game here because.
Perfect. Go ahead.
So this is my play for tonight. Like I'm really bad about like hiding what I have up for sale. So I'm not gonna tweet it out though. So you're getting this because you're watching the show. We appreciate you tuning in, and I can't make my college football show debut or whatever it is without giving out a client play. So But I need to vent for a minute. So you got to give me like 30 seconds. I played Syracuse on Sunday night. The line was 3.5. I cannot believe that this has moved in the way that it has. I thought this was going to go off Syracuse -1. Okay. So I've been scouring all week. I've been talking to my Syracuse contacts. I was like, what am I missing here? Why is this moving like this? Do we have someone out that I don't know about? It's game day. All these guys are on their way out to Vegas right now. So there's going to be I know a bunch of guys that are going to be at this game, and still nothing, no reason that this would have moved this way other than like maybe some UNLV steam hit at the open, bet up to 6.5. So I even put in my write-up, like, I absolutely love Syracuse plus 6.5 tonight. Again, I mean, take it for what it is. I made the game -1. Now, you don't have to like trust my numbers or whatever, but I look back to last week. UNLV went off a 2.5-point favorite to Fresno State after they got bet down to a pick with their, well, we'll call it a backup quarterback, but whatever. Even if he's better than Slucka or whatever, backup quarterback. They come out, destroy Fresno State. So the line opened where I expected it to. I figured it would open in the 3.5 range and get bet down, but it didn't. It went the other way, and I just like, I'm wondering, is there really that much love for this UNLV team? Like, I understand it coming into the year. A lot of sharp people picked them to win the Mountain West. I totally get the hype surrounding this team, but you mean to tell me that Fresno State was a 2.5-point dog here, and now Syracuse is a 6.5-point dog? That's insane to me. I have Syracuse power rated far greater than Fresno State. So, like, to me, I look at that. That's a monster overreaction. Listen, Syracuse has some issues, but we've seen Syracuse play Georgia Tech and those issues that everyone's going to cite as issues. Offensive line play in the last 2 games against Stanford and Holy Cross, and then sort of like a shoddy run defense at times. Like, they're known issues, and they also weren't. They didn't really affect them against what's been Syracuse's most difficult opponent to this point in Georgia Tech. And I was at that Georgia Tech game, and that was a much bigger blowout than that looks on paper. There was a hiccup on special teams at the end of that game, caused it to be closer. Syracuse kind of on their heels when they got back out on the field. I'm going off memory, Joe, but I think that like a third of Georgia Tech's yards in that game were in like the final 7 minutes because they kind of got a garbage time score, recovered an onside kick, and then like Syracuse was like deer in headlights at that point. I expect Syracuse to win this game. I feel like they win this game. I know, everything Fran Brown said this week leading up to this game. He was not happy with the effort against Holy Cross. Wasn't happy with the effort against Stanford. This is Syracuse's first time leaving the Dome this year. And I actually kind of think that that's a good thing. I think it's going to focus them because it's been a party at Syracuse this year. Like, the fans have come out. Every game's been sold out. Everyone in this area has just been telling these kids how great they are. And I think it's going to be a good thing for them to get out, go on the road, business-type trip here, play a ranked team. So Syracuse is a 4% play for me. I have a miserable number on this game. I have 3.5. You can get 6 or 6.5 right now. I do see it taking money, though, Joe. I think it's going to get back down. I like Hughes to win tonight. So there you go, 4% play.
Boom. Just gave it out there with Syracuse and UNLV. All right, Bryan, Leonard, you're not getting out of here that quickly. Nice try. I want to see you pass this one off. Why, and this was a question I saw coming in earlier, why is the total being bet up with Iowa and Ohio State? Can somebody please explain to me why we're up to nearly 46 from an opening of 42.5 against these two? Do we believe Iowa's offense is that much improved that they're going to go to Columbus and somehow move the ball up and down on that defense that is once again top notch? It just feels like a rock fight here, Bryan. What are you thinking?
I played the Iowa game over when what was the total of 35?
35, right?
Earlier?
Yep.
Yeah, maybe it's the Iowa State game.
Yep.
Iowa's got a quarterback this year. They're throwing the ball downfield. They're trying to open up this offensive playbook a little bit and make their offense so they're not running into the 11 guys at the line of scrimmage like they did for the last couple of years. I mean, Iowa's willing to throw it downfield, and we have seen Ohio State when they are starting to pull some of their players. They do fall asleep sometimes in the passing game in that regard. But you also have an Ohio State team that can put a lot of points on the board. So Iowa's a good team. Iowa's a decent team. But Ohio State, when you're looking at totals with put up as many points as they. I like this Ohio State offense, but Iowa has the ability this year to stay in the game by throwing the ball downfield. They haven't had that in the last few years. And if you take a look at Iowa's totals on the year, they've been going over.
They've been an unbelievable over team here this year. But in Columbus, we're going to learn a lot about both these teams, I think, in this game here on whether or not we can take them seriously coming out of the Big Ten here. I think it's going to be one of the more underrated games of the week. I got one more that came in here regarding Kansas, I believe, taking on Arizona State. Jesse, what are you thinking here with Arizona State and Kansas? Kansas, not very good, or at least not as good offensively as we have seen them in the past here. I think the defense has actually done a pretty decent job, but everyone seems to have fallen in love with Arizona State in this one. Are you buying State against Kansas here?
This one's going to be a tough sell, Joe. Kansas, they've been terrible, but they've been good enough that I wouldn't want to step in front of them right now. They're sort of due to get things right finally. Arizona State has, they look like they might be overvalued. They might be the better team. I mean, this one's just too difficult for me to pick a side in. I'd say I wouldn't bet on this game with the Prez's money.
Oh, well, now that is a absolutely horrific game, folks, right there. We did get one also here, Trig. Let me ask you about Indiana. How confident are you in this Indiana team taking on Northwestern? Everyone seems to think Indiana is going to go undefeated for some reason. I don't know about this. Northwestern, not exactly the greatest of offense, but it looks like Indiana's taking no prisoners this season here. You like them to boat race Northwestern?
Kind of, and it's tough because I do think there's going to be a time to bet against Indiana. I have them on my list of teams that I'd love to play against at some point, because I do think that it's somewhat like a little bit of a product of their record to this point. I think Brian Power made this point on one of our shows earlier this week, where they've won the games that they should win, right? Like they've been favored in all of these games, so it's not I don't know how impressive it is that they're unbeaten at this point. It's just like, that's what they were supposed to do so far. But Northwestern is just not a team that I want to back at this point. So even though it looks like you're getting a pretty big number, 13.5, I actually think that this is on the wrong side of that 14-point total. Ooh. Right? Like I think Indiana I think I might make them 14.5 here. So again, like I'll look to bet against Indiana down the road, but this is not the team I'm taking my stand with. I just don't think Northwestern is very good, and I could see it getting out of hand. The low total suggests that it could. I guess the 13.5 has value, but I just not the time for me. I'm gonna wait. Hope Indiana rolls here, like I think they could, and then try to go against them when there's a more formidable opponent on the other side, Joe.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's going to come a time where we're just going to hammer and look to fade Indiana big time, because the whole world seems to love them in this spot, and I'm not necessarily buying it there. All right, one final game for you, Bryan Leonard, and it has to do with another big battle in the SEC. How keen are you on, I don't know, like Lane Kiffin throwing up all over himself at home against Kentucky and then bouncing back against South Carolina? Because you talk about trendy dog. I'm yet to find anybody who thinks Ole Miss bounces back in this one. South Carolina is the trendiest of trendy dogs. What are you thinking?
That's my problem too, is South Carolina. I would like to play them, but everybody and their brother has them. And they're so inconsistent.
Yep.
I mean, if they were, if I knew what I was going to get out of South Carolina, I'd be on that side, but you never do. And that has been a concern for a couple of years with me with South Carolina. If they were to put out a consistent product every single week, I'd love to bet them because I think they've got a pretty good defense. But Mississippi is just like Tennessee. They're a very good offensive team. I don't like to lay those type of numbers against decent quality programs. Trick was just talking about Northwestern. Northwestern's a great dog, but I don't like to play them in the favorite role, and I don't want to play Mississippi in the road favorite role here. So if it was double digits, maybe, but if this price range is going to keep me from playing this game at all.
Yeah, I don't like Sellers, the quarterback. I just don't. I think he's the most inconsistent part of that offense there. Jesse, you in agreement? Is South Carolina too trendy for you as a dog in this spot?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a great. It's not that many points really when you look at who they're going up against. And I'm not going to take too much away from Ole Miss. The fact that they lost to a Kentucky team that's also given Georgia a run for their money. Kentucky could have just as easily beat Georgia. I mean, I don't think there's as much shame in losing to Kentucky as some people think there is. I'd be more inclined to back South Carolina just to put some points on the board and or Ole Miss. I think this game will get a little pointsy. I don't have a ton of respect for South Carolina's defense.
No, they are off a bye week here, but it just feels like in the past, Lane Kiffin has certainly had opportunities. By the way, Ole Miss put on a lot more yards. It wasn't like they were they still put more yards on that Kentucky defense than anybody else has. I just don't think South Carolina and Kentucky are in the same breath offensively. So that's a real trendy dog right now, South Carolina. Trend carefully here. All right. Big weekend here, week 6, college football, week 5, NFL. We told you the NHL starts tonight. Not to mention, of course, postseason baseball rolling on. So, Jesse, kick us off. Tell us what you got locked and loaded as we have a 7-day all-access special for $77. What will they get with you, my man, if they head over to your page right now at WagerTalk.com?
Well, I don't have any college football in tonight's games. I got 3 plays up for Saturday, but I do have a CFL total available at my page right now, and I've done pretty well with the CFL for the better part of a decade, actually. But that's what you can look forward to if you're looking for action tonight. The poor man's pigskin is what I like to call it.
Yeah, well, and listen, it's still the money they still pay out in green money, though, right? That still works. That's good. Then that's all that matters. We're good to go as long as we're not getting some sort of strange currency. I think we are good to go. By the way, James White, 2023, also pointing out that South Carolina smoked Kentucky. So yes, you did. Except A plus B sometimes equals F, and that's what happens there. Bryan, Leonard. Please tell me you have an NHL player, something up, locked and loaded to welcome in the season here at your page.
Well, first of all, this is only the second show I've been on this week, and the other one involved the Prez and Steve Merrill.
Oh, God.
So obviously, this is the first time I've had a chance to promote myself.
Thank you.
Yeah, I half the time when those guys are on, I don't even, by the time the show is over, I don't even remember what they picked because they're talking about their plays so often. But yeah, I've had a really good week. We had a 5% play on UNLV last week. 5% play on the Detroit Tigers is a nice underdog in baseball. I do have a 4% play going in college football tonight. I have a couple other plays up for the weekend for football action. Hockey does start tonight, and I don't have a play on the one individual game. But Detroit was nice enough, our office in Detroit was nice enough to set up a package for me. It goes on for a few more days. I've been number 1 since I've been at WagerTalk. Number 1 historically in Major League Baseball net profit. Number 1 historically in NHL net profit. And that's because I play a lot of underdogs in those games, in those leagues, and that's where the money is. If you're interested in that, you can they're going to back it all the way back to the preseason where you could have got the hockey for $6.99. Not only going to get my hockey for $6.99, you also get the rest of the baseball season for free. It's a great deal. It's up there right now. Loving this card this weekend. I've got a baseball play up for tomorrow. I've got some NFL up, and like I said earlier, a big 4% play in in the college football for tonight.
All right, I'm calling shenanigans. Who in the hell are you kidding, Bryan Leonard? We all know you have the Guardians to win everything. So don't even try. Don't even go there. We know it's the Guardians. That's fine. We know how that's rolling there, as Bryan is from Cleveland, and nobody knows the Guardians better than Bryan Leonard. All right, Adam Trigger, I thought the brownie was kicking in real quick here, but actually I think your camera was out of focus. So, safe there. But now, and I have one more question that just came in. I'll ask all three on the way out, but tell us what you got at your page at WagerTalk.com.
Yeah, so you're going to see a college football play up there, but I just gave it to you. It's Syracuse plus the points. So don't go buy that individual play. You just got it here on the show. The 7-day all-access special is great for any handicapper. I'm still going with Major League Baseball, Korean baseball, WNBA. I've actually done well across the board there. Brewers was a tough loss last night, but it's been a pretty good week in bases. Had a WNBA playoff winner earlier this week. I'm up like 25 units there on the season. And also, my college basketball full season right now is up at like an astronomically low rate if you use coupon TRIG CBB. So TRIG CBB. It's a special we're running in conjunction with the 30 previews I'm doing. But that code, it gets you, it'll be the lowest you'll get it all season. And I don't know how long they're going to have that up. I think till at least October 15th. But it gets you the whole season at a very low rate. And I obviously go hard from November 4th until one shining moment, Joe, college hoop. I think that's my thing. So that's and check out my previews, which we're running every day over the course of October. We've already got like 4 of them done and pretty much trying to post one each day. So that's what I've got. But yeah, as far as my play for Friday, Syracuse plus the points, 4%. And I do think they have a great chance to win the game.
Love that. All right, so real quick, we'll go around the horn, one final game. And don't forget, guys, if you haven't done so, you're joining us here live. We certainly appreciate it. If you haven't got that thumbs up situation yet, the thing with the buttons there on the right, would you please do that? We'd certainly appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And if you're watching on the replay, don't forget, drop your questions in the comments. We'll be in the comment section right up until kickoff all weekend long. So make sure you got any questions, drop them in the comments for us. Big question coming in a game here tonight with Oregon taking on Michigan State. Jonathan Smith, head coach of Michigan State, very familiar with Oregon, Jesse. He has always been a coach I want to back, getting a ton of points in a dog roll here. I don't know what's going on with Oregon's offense, but can Michigan State stay within 23.5 points here tonight, do you think, Jess?
I'll tell you what, I'm going to answer this question on this game, and I'm going to add in that the same methodology is going to apply to that question you asked about the Ohio State game, because the Ducks are playing Ohio State in their next game. So with both teams having each other on deck, both teams looking ahead, I would expect both teams to pull defensive starters in the second half of both games. And that is the answer to why the total might be betting over in the Ohio State game. And I like the same logic here. I think, like as you mentioned, Jonathan Smith is familiar with Oregon. There is a little bit of a rivalry angle there. Can Michigan State get some points in garbage time? I think it's possible. So, yeah, I think Oregon's going to put a bunch of points on the board. I think they're going to pull their starters in the fourth quarter with the Ohio State game on deck, and plenty of scoring in garbage time. It goes over the number. That's my take on this.
I love that. James White 2023 on Instagram. Shout out to him. Bryan Leonard, Pitt or UNC? Do you have are you leaning one way or the other? Do you even trust UNC? Is Matt Brown still there? I thought he quit.
Yeah, it's been a disappointing team, I'd have to say. Nobody would have expected them to be a home dog here against Pittsburgh. Thing is, do I trust Pittsburgh enough to lay it in their 2.5 point road favorite right here? I guess if I'm going to play it and it's not 3, I guess I prefer the Pittsburgh side. But if it got to 3, I would have no opinion whatsoever. So slight lean with Pittsburgh here.
Slight lean with Pittsburgh. And finally, Trig on the way out the door. Florida State has a backup quarterback. No, well, they had a backup quarterback in originally. And that didn't work out well anyway, DJ. Thanks so much for showing up. Clemson win by $1 trillion in this game, they want to know?
That's a tough one. I would take the points. I still think there's some quality on that Florida State roster enough to like maybe not justify them being a 2-touchdown home underdog to Clemson. I also don't know how sold I am on Clemson just like covering these monster numbers on a weekly basis. You know, you watch that Stanford Clemson game. I mean, it got there in the end, but Stanford was a little bit more competitive than I kind of expected them to be in that one. So, you know, slight lean toward Florida State plus the points. I'm not sure if it'll make my card. And then I actually lean toward North Carolina. I did a video on that one on the WagerTalk YouTube channel, which I'm on kind of a run. Those standalone videos that we do on the WagerTalk YouTube channel, I think I've hit like 4 or 5 in a row. And this week, the only college football one I did was making a case for North Carolina +3. I don't think that's going to make my client card at this point. But I did think, just from a numbers perspective, Tar Heels at home getting 3 was appealing to me. I was on North Carolina last week. I bet that early in the week at +2.5, and that did cash. I thought that they kind of didn't make any adjustments in that game against Duke. Duke made the adjustments, and North Carolina really got on their heels on the road. No pun intended. They were on their heels on the road, and they could have been up 24. They could have been up 27. They were only up 20, and Duke, they kind of just let them steal it right at the end there. So I don't think that – I think they're a more favorable play at home. And if you look at Pitt, they're one sort of like really dud. It was a game they ended up winning, but they did not play well on the road at Cincinnati in the first, like, I would say 45 minutes of that game. Kind of just like came out of nowhere to steal it late. I don't know if I want to lay it on the road with Pitt just yet. I feel like this might be, you know, they give up a lot of points. Their red zone defense hasn't been good. They've got away with winning a couple of shootouts. I referenced the Cincy game, just stole it right at the end. West Virginia, back and forth game. I think that was another one where they scored late to secure a win. So, I mean, we could be looking at a 2-2 team very easily right now. I don't know that they have done enough to justify laying 3 on the road. So lean UNC, and then just based on the numbers, I lean Florida State. Think it's too many.
All right, there you go. Plenty of action here. Week 6 in the college football slate. Don't forget to give us that thumbs up here on the way out. We certainly appreciate it. Don't forget, 7 days, $77. Site-wide, any one of these guys, 7 days, all access, all sports, all plays. For 7 days, just $77. All you have to do is visit them over on their page at WagerTalk.com. Great job, as always, guys. Appreciate it, Jesse, Bryan, Leonard, Adam, Trigger. Appreciate you guys hanging with us on this Friday. Don't forget, any questions on games, drop them in the comments. We'll be in there all weekend long up until kickoff. So until next week, best of luck with the plays. We'll see you again here on the College Football Kickoff Show. Good luck.